Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about the 308. I'm going to try to summarize all of the services that have been done to the car since it was new. I think I have all the service records from the previous two owners. And you'll get an idea about the types of repairs and restorations that have been performed. If you're planning on buying a car like this and you have access to the service records, I think that will come in quite handy. So I'm gonna try to summarize that, give you an average cost of some of the repairs, and then also include some of the things that I have done to the car since I bought it about a year ago. So let's go back to the year 1985. Alright guys, let's start at the beginning. It was September 1985 when the car was bought in Rockville, Maryland. The guy who bought it paid $64,000 with the tax included back then. That was a lot of money for the 80s. So let's start with the first service. That was at 3,000 miles. It was what the Ferrari calls the first Ferrari service. Oil and filter change. They had to repair the top cover, the snap on the floor. So it's a tonneau cover. So when you put the Targa cover behind the seats, then you can cover it with that, and it sort of snaps away from the floor. There was a minor issue with the steering, and also the oil temperature gauge was intermittent. So that's something that happened later, and it has happened to me. So that was the first service at 3,000 miles. So the second service was at 7,500 miles. Oil and filter again. The dome light was not working in the cabin. The driver's door lock was not functioning, and the driver's door was hard to close. That's something that repeated later, and to this day I sometimes have issues with that. I have to sort of bang it quite hard for it to close. That might be something I check in the next time I go to the technician. And on this one, the cooling system was also checked. The cooling hoses were changed, and there was some pipe realignment done. That was at 7,500 miles. Okay, so at 9,500 miles, 2,000 miles later, oil and filter change again. They pressure tested the cooling system. They found that it was okay. They steam cleaned the engine. The driver's door was hard to close, so that was a repeating issue. The trunk lid was not, the lid was not locking. It's tricky. Those of you that have this car, you know that you have to lock one side and then lock the other. So if anybody pretends to just snap it in place, that's not gonna happen. Who knows, that might have been the issue. The dome light was not working again, so second time for that. The key buzzer was intermittent. That's a buzzer that you hear when the key is in and out of the car. There was a sort of smell of mildew when using the air conditioning. They found that they had a clogged drain, and they cleaned that, and also they adjusted the clutch. So that was quite a service at 9,500 miles. Okay, so at 13,600 miles, the clutch was slipping. They found that there was an issue with the clutch, but they didn't have to repair it. They replaced the assembly, and they replaced the flywheel for the clutch, and that was a $2,500 service right there. The driver's door was hard to close again, third time in a row. And the owner, he reported that there was a smell of like a black lagoon inside the car. So they did find a dead mouse behind the footrest, and that was removed. So not great when you have mice getting into the car. So that was at 13,600 miles. By the way, remember there's merchandise on the GarageBot store. The link is down below. You can get, merchandise from the different cars, and this is the 308. So I think you'll be interested. It's cool stuff there. All right, let's move to the next one. All right, so the next one was at 17,300 miles. On this time, they did the Ferrari 15,000 mile service as per the book. That includes filters, gaskets, oil, air, filters, and the lights. And that was at least is a $2,100 service right there. The owner reported that there was a very stiff steering. So they replaced the steering assembly and the tie rod ends. It is stiff. It doesn't have power steering, but it looks like it was something beyond that. And then he also reported that the battery was going dead like in 2 weeks. So they replaced the battery and the charging system. They checked on it and it was okay back then. So that was at 17,300 miles. All right, so the next one was at 22,000 miles. They checked the wires for the oil pressure gauge, the coolant gauge, and the oil light was not working because the mouse that was back there behind the passenger footrest was eating on the wires. That happens with mice, as you know, and so they had to change all that, and they also adjusted the clutch. So that was at 22,000 miles. Gonna keep going for the next one. At 31,000 miles, so the owner right here waited about 9,000 miles between one service and the next. There was a leak in the transmission pan, so they had to put a new seal and a new drain plug there. And that was the only thing that happened at 31,000 miles. Let's go to the next one, which is a major service. All right, guys, we're now in 1992. Welcome to the 90s. This was a major service. 33,500 miles. This is what Ferrari will do at this stage, is the 30,000 mile service. That by itself is a $6,000 service. At least it was back in 92. I bet it's a lot more expensive now. They changed timing belts, torque heads, cam seals, all the water hoses. They cleaned, they tested all the fuel injectors. They put new rear brake pads, a number of seals and gaskets all across the engine. The alternator belt, the water belt, and the air conditioning belt were replaced. Spark plugs, all the fluids in the car, and in this case the air conditioning dryer too. So that was a big service, $6,000. That might have been the figure because it included a number of other things that the car had to get addressed. But yeah, that was at 33,500 miles, big service. All right, so at 36,000 miles, they replaced the RPM sensor and they replaced the anti-backfire valve and hose. That was the only thing at that stage. And then the owner waited about 6,000 miles. At 42,000 miles, he reported the water pump was locked, or at least they reported that to him, and that had to be rebuilt. That was almost $1,000 right there. Gonna keep going to the next one. At 43,000 miles, oil gauge was intermittent to zero. So again, the second time that happened. He reported that the power windows were slow. They are slow to this day. That's quite an antique mechanism there. At the beginning I thought I had a problem, but honestly I think that's the way it is, unless somebody watching has replaced with a more modern motor maybe, or assembly. Let me know, right? Because they're super slow and I just live with it, and but the owner was reporting it back then. And then, if you can believe it, they found another mouse. So that's mouse number 2 behind the passenger's side door panel. That might have had an issue on the windows coming up and down. I don't think the mouse was running on a wheel to make that happen. But again, please keep these cars in places where you don't get this mice and other critters. That damages a lot of the internals in the car, and particularly if they get into the wiring, they just love the flavor of that. So yeah, I don't know why people do that. honestly. Here, honestly, this is probably cleaner than, an emergency room where I keep this car. But again, mouse number 2. There you go. Let's see what the next one looks like. Okay, at 48,000 miles, another major service here. They had to replace the clutch, they had to resurface the flywheel, the brake, the gearbox, and the coolant were flushed. The speedometer was not working. I've said in other videos that I've had that intermittent issue with mine. So they found a defective speed sensor that they had to replace. The air conditioning was not working. And they found that the caliper was seizing during test drive, so they had to rebuild the calipers. That was a major service, about $6,500 right there. Then at 50,000 miles, the cylinders 1 and 2 were not firing. They had to address that. Spark plug extension was burned through. So they had to replace spark plugs, all the extensions for all of the 8 cylinders. New battery cable ends that were damaged, they replaced that too. And the starter was seized, so they had to remanufacture the starter. So that was another big service, about $2,500. All right, now we're at 51,000 miles, still with the same owner, first owner. This is probably the biggest service so far. It was $7,500 there. Cam belts were replaced, valves were adjusted, the valve cover gaskets, engine belts, cam seals, tensioner bearings. There was a new water pump installed, new version of fuel lines into the fuel tank because the ones that they had were frozen or hard or were corroded after the years. New ignition wire set, so quite a service at 51,000 miles. Then he took the car there again shortly thereafter, and he replaced the shifter, shaft seals, and the pan gaskets, and there were some oil leaks that they had to address. At that time, I think he spent another $1,100 there. I think he decided to sell the car. So the second owner took over at 52,000 miles. All right, second owner, Brian, good guy. I don't have much. I have a lot of documentation, as you can see, from the first owner. All I know that he bought the car around December of 2015. He put new tires there, Pirelli Cinturato P7, 205 55R, 16 inches. And there's not much I know. I don't have any documentation there. Only things I know is things that my technician have told me, that there was some undercarriage damage. I don't know if that happened with the second owner or the first owner. He told me that there was a whole paint job done on the car. You can see some areas where it's visible. I don't know when that happened or why did that happen. And my technician also tells me that the car has new original OEM Ferrari wheels, which is great, but that happened at some point, and I don't have documentation for that. So Brian, if you're watching and you have any documents, please send them my way so I can complete the history of the car. But that was it. And then I bought the car at 52,500 miles, more or less, and that was the third owner. So I'll tell you what I did then. All right, so we get to when I bought the car, August of 2019. So it's almost a year since I got it. Very happy. I got it on eBay, if you can believe that. That's a whole separate story. Maybe I'll do a video about that. And when I got it, I took it to my local technician, and that was a major service because it's been a while since he had service done. So it was $7,200, more or less. We did the timing belt service. That was the first thing that I wanted to do. The water pump pulley was changed. Coolant hoses were changed. The air conditioning belt, the alternator belt, The radiator was leaking, so we took it out, we repaired it, he rebuilt it, repainted it. I mean, it looks fantastic. We did some finishing in the engine bay. You've seen the intake manifold and the throttle housing. He powder coated that. Some people that he knows, they did a great job powder coating that in red. And the intake gasket. So that was the last service. I have no major issues now. A few things here and there for the next time I take it to my tech. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, I recommend that if you can get one of these cars with the full service history like I have, then you know what has happened, what may happen. I don't know if this video will be helpful. This is pretty much the history of this car. Every car is different, but there are some themes here that I've seen in other 308 users, and they reported those problems or issues on the web. So this is just a guide of my car, give you an idea what to expect, the importance of having the history of the car, and as you invest in a machine like this, it's very rewarding. I'll say it again, I'll do it again any time of the day. So very happy, hope that helps, and let's see some rolling footage now. Alright guys, so that's it. Hope you find the video useful, and a guide for anybody that is willing to invest in a car like this. As I've said in other videos, it's not perfect, but it's a lot of fun, and if it's well kept, I think it's a great investment. So remember to subscribe, and see you around next time. Take care. Bye.